The wolves did not follow far, but the road felt hunted all the same. Heat shook above the plain, and the fence posts trembled in the mirage. Ruth Hale walked slowly with her little girl, Tessa, one hand on the child's shoulder, one hand carrying a thin broom they had found behind a depot. Each step scraped dust. Each breath stung like pepper. Ruth's lips were cracked, but her voice was even. "1 more mile," she said. "You can do 1 more." A square of corrals rose out of the glare, then a barn, then a low house with a stovepipe like a finger pointing at the hard sky. A man stood by the gate, hat brimmed down, a calm figure who did not move quickly for strangers. He watched them the way dry country watches clouds, without hope, but still watching. Ruth felt her knees loosen. She would not fall, not in front of Tessa. The girl clutched the broom with 2 hands as if it were a flag she had been told to carry. Sweat drew tracks down a dusty face. A cough pulled at Ruth's chest with a fishhook. She pushed the cough down and stopped at the gate. "Sir," Tessa said, voice small but steady. "Mama's fading. I'll sweep every stall if you let us rest." The man's gaze shifted, taking in mother, child, broom, and the road behind. "Name's Jonah Pike," he said. "No payment needed." He lifted the latch. The gate creaked like an old fiddle. Inside smelled of hay and warm animals, safe and rich. He hung a lantern, though it was still near midday. A habit, maybe, or a welcome. He set a bucket for water and a stool for Ruth. "Sit," he said. "Breathe slow," Ruth did, though pride fought it. Tessa stepped into the shadow of the barn and started to sweep. Stroke by stroke, she made a clean path on the floor. Ruth watched the small line lengthen like hope. Jonah brought broth from the house in a tin cup. "Careful," he said. "It's hot." Steam rose and curled around Ruth's tired face. She drank and felt her chest ease. Outside, the plane kept its heat in silence. Inside, the broom whispered. The lantern hummed, and a man who owed them nothing held open a door. Ruth knew this choice would mark the day their long road turned homeward finally. Jonah showed them the tack room, a narrow space with a peg for hats and a bench smoothed by years. "You can rest here for now," he said. "Barn stays cooler than the house. Wind runs through the cracks." He opened a small window. Fresh air moved across Ruth's face like a hand. She closed her eyes for one breath, then another. "I can work," Ruth said. "Needle, patching, cooking, if you have basic things." "Rest first," Jonah answered. He set a folded quilt on the bench. It was mended in many places, but clean. "After that, we'll see." Tessa kept sweeping. The rhythm soothed her. The soft rasp told a simple truth. There is dust and there is the broom. She made a neat square at the barn door and shook out the straw. A hen clucked at her toes, bold and curious. Ruth sipped the last of the broth and handed back the cup. "Thank you," Jonah nodded. "You two eat?" he asked. "Not proper," Ruth said. "We have a crust in our bag." "It'll do." "It won't," he said. "Wait here." He left by the side door, quiet as a shadow. Ruth listened to the day. Insects sang in the cottonwoods by the creek. Far off, a cow lowed. Tessa's broom whispered like a lullaby. Ruth ran her thumb over the quilt stitches. Someone had taken time to care for a thing that had already seen hard use. It steadied her. Jonah came back with bread, a heel of cheese, and 2 small apples. "Table's not far," he said. "But you'll eat here out of the heat." Tessa's eyes shone. She looked to her mother. Ruth nodded. "Slow," she warned. "Small bites." "Small bites," Tessa repeated, grinning. They ate with the simple joy of people who have not wasted food. Ruth cut the apple into thin moons for the child. Juice ran down Tessa's wrist, sweet and sticky. For a moment, the road fell away. Jonah leaned on the doorpost, watching without staring. "Where from?" he asked. "South Road," Ruth said. "Rail yard." "Before that, a town that died in the winter, the mine closed." "Many towns did," Jonah said. "You aim to keep moving?" Ruth folded the crust bag. "We aim to stop when it's decent to stop." Jonah tipped his hat. "Decent is a good word." He glanced toward town. "Rest today. Tomorrow we'll talk about work." Dawn came thin and pale, like a sheet pulled over the hills. Ruth woke to the smell of hay and the soft talk of horses. Her cough tugged once, then let go. Tessa slept with the broom across her knees, guarding it. Ruth eased it away and kissed the child's hair. "We'll make this day count," she whispered. Jonah had already been to the house and back. He set a kettle on the small stove and poured hot water over the grounds. "Coffee's rough," he said. "Milk for the young one." He handed Tessa a tin cup with milk and a spoon of sugar. Her eyes went wide. Ruth looked toward the barn aisle. What do you need done first? Jonah scratched his jaw. Tools put to order. Saddles wiped. Tack checked for bad stitching. He glanced at Ruth's hands. If you can sew leather, that's worth more than gold out here. I can, Ruth said. Needle is a friend. Tessa stood straight. I can line things. I can fetch water. Good, Jonah said. Work is the clear road. They set to it. Tessa made rows from what had been a heap. Hammers, nippers, hoof picks, awls, each on a peg. Ruth sat with a bridle in her lap, threading waxed linen through the torn place, pulling it snug with strong, careful hands. She hummed a low tune from her mother's kitchen. The sound was steady as a clock. Jonah came and stood by the workbench. He slid a plank into a brace and began to plane the edge of a wide board. Long curls of pale wood fell like ribbons. Table's too sharp for little arms, he said. No one should get cut reaching for bread. Ruth paused and watched the board grow smooth. Kindness wears plain clothes, she said. He shrugged. Sharp edges don't make a home. By noon the barn looked different. The aisle was clean. Leather hung true. A saddle gleamed with oil. Ruth's stitches lay even as fence wire. Tessa's hands were black with honest dust. She smiled at the sight of her neat wall. Jonah nodded once. Looks right, he said. Eat, then I'll show you the creek. It runs high this season. High as trouble? Ruth asked. High can turn fast, he said. You'll want to know the paths when water speaks. They stepped into the day together, 3 shadows falling in one line. They followed the fence to the creek, the sun high and sharp. The water ran brown and quick, shoving foam against roots and limbs. Cottonwoods leaned over like tall men listening. Jonah pointed to pale scrapes on the trunks. Last rise came this high, he said. If you see fresh sticks there, the next rise is near. Ruth studied the bend. The bank is underlit and dark. Where's the safe ground? Ridge path, Jonah said, nodding to a faint line. If the creek jumps, you head up. Don't argue with water. It never listens. Tessa tossed a twig and watched it spin and race. It runs like a horse without a rider, she said. Jonah smiled a little. Good eye. He knelt and drew a quick map in the sand. House here. Barn here, 2 gates. This one sticks. Needs fixing before the weather turns, hoofbeats sounded. A deputy's star flashed as a rider eased from the willows. Jonah Pike, the man said, tipping his hat. Strays under your roof. Guests, Jonah said. The deputy's gaze slid to Ruth and Tessa. Mustache neat as a ruler. Tone pinched. His eyes weighed them like grain on a scale out here. Ma'am, little one. Folks talk. Best move along before Sunday. Ruth held her shoulders square. We don't aim for trouble. Trouble finds folks who don't fit, he said. Crane, he added, touching the star. Deputy. I'll look in again. He turned his horse without waiting for a reply. Dust hung, then thinned to nothing. Tessa's hand found Ruth's. We can help, Mama, she whispered. We can show him. We'll help, Ruth said, though her chest pulled tight. Back at the barn, Tessa stopped at the side gate. This is the one, she said, testing it. The hinge sagged. Nails are loose. Jonah brought a hammer and a tin of bent nails. Hold it steady. Tessa braced the plank with both hands. Ruth set her shoulder under the weight. Jonah drove the nails in clean. The gate lifted right and true. Better, he said. Inside the house, the air was cool and smelled of bread. Jonah set a pot of stew on the table he had smoothed. Eat with me, he said, simple as a fence post. They bowed their heads. No long speech. Just one plain line. Thank you for work and food. Then spoon, steam, and a quiet that felt like a promise. Afternoon light slid across the yard like a slow river. After stew, Ruth washed the bowls and set them to dry on a clean board. Tessa carried each spoon as if it were silver. Jonah checked the sky, then nodded toward the corral. We'll salt the cattle and look at hooves, he said. Then call it a day. Ruth wrapped a scarf around her throat. The cough had eased but left a tender ache. She followed Jonah to the pen. The cattle crowded the trough, sides heaving, hides dusty with travel from the west pasture. Tessa stood on the lowest rail and counted under her breath. 21, 22. She smiled when the last calf butted in. 24. Counting heads saves trouble, Jonah said. Good habit. He showed Tessa how to scatter salt by walking and letting it fall, not clumping it. She did it careful and proud. Ruth knelt by a young cow with a cracked hoof. She cleaned the split with a sliver of cloth and dabbed tallow. This will hold, she said. Jonah watched her hands. Respect was shown in the way he did not praise too much. Wind shifted. Bells on the ridge gave a faint tin sound. Weather's turning, Jonah said. Storm lines build quickly this time of year. He tested the corral latch. It clicked clean because of the morning's work. Small things stacked into safety. They led the herd to the nearby pasture and let them settle. On the walk back, Tessa found a smooth stone shaped like a teardrop. She pressed it into Ruth's palm. Keep it for good days, she said. In the barn, Ruth set a small space in order. Needle roll, thread, tin of buttons, square of canvas. She patched a sleeve from Jonah's torn shirt. The cloth was thick, the tear honest. She made the seam neat and strong. When Jonah stepped in, she held the shirt up. He ran a thumb along the new line. Stitch rides true, he said. Work ought to last, Ruth replied. Tessa brought 2 cups of water. I lined all the nails by size, she announced. Jonah looked at the tool wall. The rows were straight as a fence. A corner of his mouth lifted. Evening came softly. They sat on the threshold watching swallows snag insects. No speeches, just the day lying itself down, and 3 people letting their shoulders drop. Some homes begin quietly. Tessa found a broomcorn seed caught in the bristles and set it on the windowsill like a treasure. Maybe it will grow, she said. Ruth smiled and pressed the smooth teardrop stone beside it. 2 small things, she said. Both mean hope. Jonah brought in a short length of rope and laid it on the clean floor. Lesson, he said. Gate knots and quick release. If a horse panics, you want a knot that lets go fast. He showed the loop, the tuck, the pull. His hands moved as calmly as water. Tessa watched, then tried. Her first knot jammed. Slow as clean, he said. Clean as fast. She tried again. This time the rope slipped free when she tugged. Her face lit. Ruth tried next, fingers steady like sewing. She got it right the first time. Jonah nodded once. Good. A hen hopped onto the sill and pecked the seed. Tessa laughed. She wants to plant it her way. Ruth shooed the bird gently, then set the seed back. We'll give it a box and dirt, she said. Jonah went to the shed and returned with a small crate. He lined it with shavings, brought a scoop of soil, and set the box under the light. Every house needs one growing thing, he said. He fetched his pocket knife and sat on the step. Hold still, he told the broom handle. He shaved it smooth where a splinter stood proud, then carved a tiny star near the top. Marks make things ours, he said. Tessa traced the star. It's a promise mark, she whispered. Ruth felt her throat warm. They ate a simple supper, fried potatoes, onion, and a heel of bacon chopped small. After, Jonah fixed the squeak in the tack room hinge with a touch of tallow. Tessa tried her knot on the bucket handle and grinned when it slipped free. As dusk laid a purple band across the hills, Ruth hummed a tune. It was a kitchen song, plain and soft. Tessa leaned into her, eyelids heavy. Jonah listened from the doorway, hat in his hands. When the song ended, he spoke low. Law's a word, he said, but a man's word is law to himself. Ruth met his eyes and held them a beat. Then we'll keep our word, she answered. The lantern glow reached only so far, but within that circle everything felt right-shaped. A sharp cry cut the morning. Not a person, an animal. Jonah was on his feet before the echo faded. Wire, he said, and moved fast across the yard. Ruth followed with Tessa close behind, the broom left leaning like a soldier. A yearling had pushed the fence near the creek and tangled his foreleg. Barbs bit deep. He fought the trap and made it worse. Panic shone white around his eye. Easy, Jonah said, voice low. Easy, boy. He slid his rope along the ground, loop open, careful not to scare the animal. Ruth saw the blood and the useless trash. Panic cuts deeper than wire, she said, more to herself. Tessa, bring my needle roll and the clean rags. Jonah tossed the loop and set the rope high on a stout post. When I pull, you press, he told Ruth. Tessa raced back with the kit, face set like a grown man. Ruth wrapped a rag above the gash and leaned. Jonah drew the leg out straight. The wire hummed. Quick release knot, Jonah said. I remember, Tessa answered. Her small hands made the loop, the tuck, the path out. She passed the tail to Jonah. He pulled. The loop took the strain without biting down. Ruth slid her hand between fetlock and barb, using a stick to lift the worst prong. Now, she said. Jonah eased the leg clear. The yearling shook but did not kick. Ruth pressed the clean cloth hard. Tessa, water, Jonah's knife flashed. He clipped the cruel curls from that stretch of fence and tossed them aside. "We'll mend properly after," he said. "Life first." Ruth cleaned the wound with boiled water from the kettle they carried everywhere. She packed a little tallow mixed with honey. "It keeps out dirt and flies," she said. "Old country trick." The yearling's breathing slowed. He leaned into her hand like he remembered gentler days. Jonah stroked the neck once. "You did fine," he told them both. They set a temporary board and tied it with the fast knot Tessa knew. The fence held. The animal limped into the shade. Ruth washed her hands at the creek. Pink lines swirled away. Tessa stood quietly beside her. "I wasn't scared after the first part," the girl said. "My hands knew." "Hands learn truth," Ruth said. "Brains follow after." Jonah looked at the sky. "Storm by sundown," he said. "Let's get ready." They worked before the heat found them. Jonah laid out coils of rope, a sack of nails, 2 spare boards, and a lantern with fresh wick. "Storm wants excuses," he said. "We won't give it one." Ruth tied her hair back with a strip of calico and set to checking shutter hooks on the house. Tessa carried small tools in a tin pail and kept a running list in her head like a prayer. At the side gate, the troublesome one from yesterday, they tested the new nails. It lifted smoothly. "Gate's a promise," Ruth said. "Keep it and it keeps you." They sandbagged the low spot near the barn door with burlap stuffed from a feed pile. Tessa knelt to tamp each bag with her fists. "Good enough to sit on," she judged. Jonah nodded. "If water kisses the sill, it stops here first." They walked the fence line in a slow, careful mile. Where the wire sagged, they pulled it tight. Where posts leaned, they set a brace. Ruth's hands were quick with knots now. Loop, tuck, path out, the rope answering her like it knew her name. Tessa fetched staples, counted them out by 2s, and brought water when words ran short. Clouds shouldered up from the west by noon. The light went pewter. The air smelled like iron and sage. Jonah pointed at the cottonwoods. Their leaves flipped to show the pale undersides. "Trees tell it straight," he said. "Believe them." Back at the house, Ruth swept the stoop as if a clean threshold could steady a sky. Tessa planted the broomcorn seed in the crate, pressing it with one careful finger. "Grow if you like," she told it. "No pressure." Ruth laughed, the sound small but bright. They ate quickly. Cornbread, cold beans, and a slice of last night's fried potato. Jonah poured coffee, then set the pot aside and filled cups with creek-cool water instead. "Storm and coffee don't mix," he said. "Makes a man jumpy when he should be still." Wind came first, a long hand across the grass. Chickens hustled for the underhouse. Horses turned their rumps to the west. Jonah checked the herd gate and set the side pen open for a safe spillway. "If they press," he said, "let them flow here." Ruth stood with the mended quilt over her shoulders and watched the land brace. "We'll hold," she said. "Hold and bend," Jonah answered. "That's the trick." Wind leaned harder on the barn, then paused like a big animal thinking. The first fat drops hit the dust and popped into dark coins. Jonah set the lantern low and checked the window latch again. "We'll ride it here," he said. "The best place is the work you know." Ruth pulled the quilt close and sat on the bench. Tessa curled at her side, awake but quiet, the way children listen to weather. For a while they only watched the door seams breathe. The smell of rain deepened, sharp and clean. Ruth felt the cough stir and settle. She spoke in a low voice. "We started at Candle Rock, a mining town. When the vein ran thin, the store closed, then the school. My husband took a day's work hauling ore." Cold got into his chest. By spring, he was gone. Jonah's face did not change, but his hand made a fist and opened. "I'm sorry," he said. "Mine towns eat men. I made soup for bachelors, mended for families, stretched weeks into months. Then the freight man said the road north was passable. I sold what we couldn't carry, kept the needle, the kettle, and the broom. That's all a house needs to start." Thunder rolled a cup across the sky. Tessa pressed closer. "Will it break the barn?" she asked. "No," Jonah said. "This barn's seen worse. Wood remembers how to stand." He set his hat on a peg and sat across from them, hatless, making him seem younger. "My wife died 2 winters back. Fever in 3 days. I learned how quiet a house can be." Ruth looked at the plain table edge and tiny curls of shavings in a corner. "You keep things steady," she said. He nodded once. "Steady's the work. Feeling comes after." He glanced at Tessa's broom by the door. "Decency's not a speech. It's a chore you repeat." Rain thickened. The yard turned to pewter. Through the roar, the creek's deeper voice rose and fell. Ruth pictured the map Jonah drew in sand. Barnhouse, 2 gates, ridge path. She measured them in her mind like steps she could walk blind. Home, she said, is made by hands that show up. Then we're close, he answered. Lightning flared far off, white as a new page. 3 faces were lit the same as if kin already, held inside one room against a loud world. By morning, the storm had walked east, leaving puddles that held the sky. Jonah hitched the wagon and checked the creek's scoured banks. Safe enough, he said. We'll go to town for flour and nail stock. Ruth wrapped the mended quilt around Tessa and climbed up beside him. The road shone in broken pieces. Meadowlarks started again, brave after thunder. They reached the main street near noon. False fronts stood bright. Mercantile, smithy, cafe, church hall with a bell roped low. People paused to look. Jonah set the brake and helped them down as if it were normal. He did not hurry or hide. Inside the mercantile, the owner, Mr. Dwyer, wiped his hands on a clean sack. Storm treat you fair? He asked. Fair enough, Jonah said. He slid a list across. Flour, coffee, a sack of oats, 2 files, nails, and a pair of small boots if you have them. Tessa's eyes went to the shelf. A line of children's boots stood like soldiers. Ruth touched Tessa's shoulder. Only if it's right, she said. It's right, Jonah answered plain. He checked the size against Tessa's foot with 2 fingers space and nodded. Dwyer wrapped the boots in paper and tied the bundle with twine. The door banged. Deputy Crane stepped in, hat dripping. His gaze took in the 3 of them together. Morning, he said to the room and then to Jonah. I see your guest learned where the road runs. Road runs through town, Jonah said. Like it runs by my gate. Crane's smile was thin. Sunday's coming. Folks keep a neat line here. Mrs. Alder, the midwife, lifted her head from the calico. Neat lines leave people out, she said. I don't recall that in scripture. Her eyes were kind to Ruth. You look steadier today. Thank you, Ruth said. Jonah set a coin stack on the counter. Put the boots on the bill with my name, he told Dwyer. And mark a note. Mother and child under my care while needed. He did not raise his voice. He did not look at Crane. The words settled like a fence post set deep. Silence held a beat, then moved on. Dwyer cleared his throat. Coffee's fresh, he said. Help yourselves. Outside, the bell at the church hall rang once, bright as tin in the sun. People returned to errands. Some nodded. None spoke against him in the clean light. Deputy Crane did not leave matters there. That afternoon, he rode out along the creek with 2 townsmen, hats neat, boots polished by mud. He dismounted at Jonah's gate and called without crossing. Pike, he said, council expects tidy answers. Sunday noon. We need to know your intentions. Jonah stepped from the barn, sleeves rolled. My intentions are work and quiet. Not the kind we tally, Crane replied. A widow under your roof raises questions. If they are hired, show papers. If they are kin, show proof. If they are beggars, send them on. Ruth stood in the shadow, Tessa's hand in hers. She felt heat rise in her cheeks, then cool again. We are workers, she said, calm. We pay back with hands. Crane looked past her to the neat rows of tools, the clean aisle, the reset gate. He saw it all and still shook his head. Sunday, he repeated. Lines are lines. He tugged his reins and left a row of hoof prints like stamps. When the dust settled, Jonah turned to Ruth. No rush, he said. We do exactly what we were doing, making things sound. He went to the shed and brought out a broken harrow tooth. Can you drill cloth to pad this clamp? He asked. I can, Ruth said. The small job steadied her. She punched holes with an awl, stitched layers of canvas, and handed him the pad. It will keep the bolt from chewing. Tessa carried nails, counted slowly and sure. 1 for the clamp, 1 for the crate, 1 for the latch, she said, like a game that kept fear from growing. Mrs. Alder stopped by near evening with a basket of greens. I heard wind of Sunday talk, she said. Eat well the day before a stand. It helps. She listened to Ruth's chest with a funnel and a short length of rubber. Rest more, not less. To Jonah, she added, kindness is a plow. It leaves a straight furrow if you keep your eyes ahead. They ate stew thickened with cornmeal. After, Ruth mended the cuffs of Jonah's work shirt so they would not get mud. He wore it, then tipped his hat. Fits, he said. We'll meet Sunday standing up, not hunched. Night came clean and starry. The pressure felt real, but so did the steadiness under it. Ruth slept lightly, ready to rise at any early sound outside. Sunday came clear and sharp, the kind of day that shows every nailhead on a board. Jonah watered the horses early, then washed with cold water from the pump. Ruth braided her hair and tied a clean ribbon at Tessa's neck. They walked the lane together, dust soft under boots, the church bell pulling them along one calm note at a time. The town gathered in the hall after prayers. Benches scraped. Windows stood open to let in honest air. Deputy Crane sat near the front with 3 councilmen, a ledger on his knees. Mrs. Alder took a place by the door, hands folded on her basket. Mr. Dwyer leaned against the wall, eyes quiet but bright. Jonah did not wait to be called. He stood when the room settled. "My name is Jonah Pike," he said. "I run cattle on the South Creek. This mother and child are under my care while needed. They work fairly for what they use. They owe no one here a thing." Crane tapped his ledger. "Is the woman hired?" "She is," Jonah said. "Then wages must be written." "They are written in the work," Jonah answered. "I feed them. They mend, sweep, sort, and save calves when wire bites. That is the count." Murmurs moved like wind under a door. Mrs. Alder's voice cut clean. "Law allows hiring without a stamp if both sides speak plainly in public." Crane's mouth thinned. "Speak plain then," he said to Ruth. "What is your intention?" Ruth stood. Her hands were steady at her sides. "To make a safe corner for my child," she said. "To repay kindness with ours. To leave when we are strong unless asked to stay." A hush followed, long enough to hear the bell rope tap the wall outside. Mr. Dwyer lifted a finger. "I've seen their work," he said. "Order follows them like a good team follows lines." Others nodded, slow but sure. Crane looked from face to face, then set his ledger down. "Very well. Keep to the rules. Sunday's quiet, no fights. No debt, Jonah said. He reached into his pocket and set a small key on the table. "Barn room is theirs. I marked it so." Ruth's breath caught. Tessa squeezed her hand. The room, once tight, felt wide as the prairie itself. Outside, clouds thinned, and sunlight fell like a clean sheet over the yellow grass. Deputy Crane was not done with lines and clocks. The next morning he rode by alone and hung a small notice on Jonah's gate with a neat nail. "Inspection Friday," it read. "Noon. Order required." He tipped his hat toward the house, eyes like chips of cold water, and rode on without dust. Jonah took the paper down and handed it to Ruth. "He wants a time to lean on," he said. "We'll give him nothing to push." Ruth read the words slowly. "Then we will have things right by Thursday," she said. "Friday is for breathing." Tessa traced the nail hole. "We can make it clean again," she said, and fetched a small plug of pitch. She pressed it in and smoothed the wood. The gate looked whole. They planned the week like a trail map. Monday, tools, harness, and the roof over the tack room. Tuesday, fence south of the bend and the bad post near the creek. Wednesday, pantry shelves and a linen curtain for the barn room. Thursday, sweep, scrub, oil, and polish until the place shone like a good saddle. Work began like a song in 4 beats. Ruth took the roof first. She cut patches from old tin roofing, punched holes with an awl, and tacked the seams with careful taps. Jonah climbed up to set the tar, moving sure-footed. "Water listens to seams," he said. "We tell it where to go." Tessa made labels from scrap paper for nails and screws. Small, middle, big. She lined jars in a row and stuck the notes on with paste made from flour and water. "Words help hands," she said, pleased to see order bloom. At the creek fence, the bad post wobbled like a loose tooth. Jonah dug a new hole while Ruth measured the brace. Tessa brought stones to pack around the base. "Stone first, then dirt," Jonah said. "Stone tells dirt how to hold." When they were done, the post stood like a soldier waiting orders. Each night, they ate simple but full beans with onion and bacon if there was any. Thick bread and apples, shared in slices. Mrs. Alder stopped by with a small jar of horehound syrup for Ruth's cough, and a smile that said, "Keep going. Friday comes the same speed whether you worry or not," she said. "Best meet it with a clean floor." By Thursday sunset, the barn room looked like a place meant not borrowed. The broom leaned by the door, the key on its nail, and 3 sets of boots in a neat line said what needed saying. Friday noon brought blue sky and dry air, but the creek talked louder than yesterday. It gurgled with a restless note like a man clearing his throat before bad news. Jonah walked the bank with Ruth and Tessa, testing the ground with a stick. "High water upstream," he said. "We'll see it here by evening if it breaks loose." They checked the spillway pen, the sandbags, and the side gate they had mended. Tessa ran her palm along the hinge and nodded. "It still lifts clean," she said. Ruth felt the air on her skin, cool at first, then sticky as if the day could not decide its temper. Deputy Crane appeared on the lane ahead of schedule, watch chain bright. He looked around, taking in every tidy peg, every swept corner. "Inspection," he said. "I'll be quick." Jonah stood easy. "You'll see what we have." Crane walked the barn aisle. He touched the labeled jars, the new brace, and the plain table edge. He checked the tack room roof where the tin lay true. He said nothing until he reached the door with the key on a nail. "Room for two," he said. "Appearance matters." "It is safe and clean," Ruth replied. "That matters more." Crane's eyes flicked to Tessa. "You keep to chores?" "I do," Tessa said, chin level. He sniffed and made a mark in his book. "Fine, keep the Sabbath. Pay your bills." He closed the ledger with a click. "I'll be at the cafe if needed." As he turned, a low boom rolled up the valley. Not thunder, something heavy letting go. Jonah's head snapped toward the bend. "Logjam," he said. "It's breaking." The creek's voice rose quickly and meanly. Cattle in the nearby pasture lifted their heads. The first brown surge pushed past the cottonwoods and bit at the undercut bank. Water spat sticks in a dead branch like a spear. "Gates," Jonah said. "Now." They moved fast without waste. Ruth tied her scarf tightly. Tessa ran for the side pen, hands already making the quick release knot in her mind. Jonah unlatched the main gate and lined the cattle toward the safe spillway. The ground trembled, faint as a heartbeat underfoot. Crane hesitated, then swung back into the saddle. "You'll lose the east fence," he called. "Fences grow back," Jonah answered. "Lives don't." Rainless sky mocked the flood, hard blue above brown rage, but they kept moving together. Water hit the bend and leaped the bank. It came in sheets and ropes, fast as running horses. Wind carried the roar downstream hard today. Jonah waved his hat and shouted, "Hup!" The herd bunched, confused by the brown river. He put himself at their shoulder and turned the leaders toward the spillway pen. "Easy, girls. Follow the nose ahead," he called. Ruth ran to the side gate. The hinge held. The latch was stuck with grit. She jammed her thumb under the bar and could not lift it. Tessa slid beside her. "My hands are small," the girl said. She pushed 2 fingers into the mud and found the latch tongue. She worked it until it gave with a pop. Ruth swung the gate wide. It cleared a path. Bawling rose from the east pocket. 2 calves were trapped behind a rail, water pushing at their ribs. Ruth grabbed the rope from the post. "Hold the tail," she told Tessa. "If I slip, you pull." She looped the rope across her body and stepped into the rush up to her knees. Stones rolled under her boots. Jonah saw her and cut 3 cows toward the pocket. "Mothers, go," he urged. They pressed to the calves and steadied them with flanks. Ruth got the rope around the nearer calf's chest. "Now," she said. Tessa leaned back, feet braced, rope running over the smooth plank Jonah had set. The calf slid free, scrambled, and stood shivering but safe. The second calf was wedged tighter. A log bumped Ruth's thigh and spun away. She set the rope lower under the belly and tried to lift as the water shoved. Her breath came short. "One more heave," she said. Tessa pulled clean and steady. The knot held and then slipped like it was greased by prayer. The calf lurched into the spillway and bolted after its mother. Deputy Crane had come back at a gallop. He set his horse at the fence. "Need a hand?" he called. "Ride the ridge and warn the alders," Jonah said. "If the water jumps again, they'll need height." Crane wheeled and went without talk. The worst of the surge passed. Water still ran high, but the line of cattle moved smoothly now, heads low, feet sure. Ruth wrung her sleeves and laughed once, breathless. "Gates still a promise," Tessa said. "It saved us," Jonah answered. "So did you." The flood's back broke and the creek began to talk like itself again, low, fast, but no longer mean. Foam clung to grass stems. Jonah walked the fence with a rope over his shoulder and checked for breaks. 2 rails gone east side, he said. "We'll mend when the ground quits sliding." Ruth wrung water from her sleeves and tested her legs. They trembled, then steadied. Tessa stood at the side gate, watching the herd funnel to higher ground. She kept her hand on the latch like a guard at a city door. A bawl answered from the willows. One small steer had drifted into an eddy and circled nose-high, hooves skidding. Jonah stepped to the bank, felt the mud slough under his boot, and stopped. "Bank won't hold," he said. "We throw from here." Ruth coiled the rope twice and let it speak. The loop opened, sailed, and fell over the animal's chest. "Take strain," she told Tessa. The girl leaned back, feet set, rope paying over the plank. Jonah braced the tail around a post and walked the line hand over hand. The steer found purchase and lurched free, legs windmilling, then scrambled up the cut. They worked without shouting. Work wastes less breath when it is quiet. When the last head cleared the spillway, Tessa slid the quick release and brought the gate to half, ready to shut if panic returned. It didn't. The herd spread on the ridge like stones set with care. Deputy Crane returned at a trot, hoarse with sweat. "Alders are safe," he called. "Bridge at the ford is out." Church steps took a lick but still stand. He looked at them, wet, tired, steady, and let out a breath he didn't hide. "You held and bent," Jonah said. "Same as we said." Crane nodded once. "I'll send men for the east rails after noon." He looked toward town where the bell did not ring. "Folks saw the water. They'll know you pulled weight." Ruth pushed damp hair from her cheek. "Knowing is lighter than guessing," she said. They closed the gate and walked the line. The yard smelled of iron and sage. Sun pressed through clouds and turned drops to fire. Tessa lifted the broom and set it by the door. "Some debts are paid by standing beside," Jonah said. "And by showing up." Ruth answered. The house felt taller when they went in together. Men from town came after noon with rails on their shoulders and shovels over their backs. Mr. Dwyer brought a sack of nails and a jug of water. Mrs. Alder set bread and salt on the porch. Deputy Crane rode in slowly. No ledger today. He swung down and tied his horse with a simple knot anyone could trust. They walked the break on the east side. Mud clung, but the ground held. Jonah set the first post straight. "Stone first," he said. Tessa brought rocks in her apron and packed them tightly around the base. Ruth held the rail while Dwyer drove the spikes. Crane braced with his shoulder. They worked like they had known one another longer than 2 weeks. When the last rail thudded into place, the fence line looked true again, a quiet sign that people can fix what water tries to take. Crane dusted his hands and looked toward the barn. "You turned the herd clean," he said to Jonah, and then to Ruth and Tessa. You two did not waver. Ruth met his eyes without heat. "Work keeps fear small," she said. Crane nodded once. "That's so." He raised his voice for the men. "Town owes thanks here." Jonah wiped his palms on his trousers and stood with his shoulders square. He did not clear his throat or search for words. He spoke to them plainly. "You all saw how they stood," he said. He looked at Ruth, then at Tessa, then back to the men. "They are my people now. Under my care, under my roof. Not for a day. For as long as they'll have it." A stillness came. The kind that means a thing just shifted true. Mrs. Alder smiled into her basket. Mr. Dwyer tipped his hat. Crane let out a breath and gave one short nod. The sort a man gives when a fence post sets at last. "Then we'll count them in," he said. Jonah walked to the house door. He drove a new nail beside the latch higher than the barnroom nail, and hung a second key there from a leather thong. He looked at Ruth. "House key," he said. "If you want it." Ruth's hand shook once, then steadied. She lifted the key and felt its honest weight. "We want it," she said. She looked down at Tessa. "Say it right." Tessa stood tall. "We are us," she said. "Us," Jonah answered. The word held like a beam across a room, simple and strong. Days after the flood, the land seemed to breathe easier. Grass stood back up. The creek settled into its banks and kept its own steady song. Ruth aired quilts in sunlight that smelled like pine. She scrubbed the stoop and set the broom by the door, bristles trimmed neatly where they had worn. Tessa pressed a finger into the box of soil and laughed. "The seed woke," she said. A pale sprout curved like a question mark, small and brave. Jonah planned a second board for the table, rounding every edge. "No corners to bruise a child," he said. He fixed a loose window catch so it closed with one honest click. Ruth hung the linen curtain she had stitched. It moved like a soft breath in the afternoon wind. Inside felt like it should. Town thawed. 2. Mr. Dwyer set a basket by his counter with a hand-lettered sign. "Flood help. Take what you need." The church hall opened for a shared meal, stew and cornbread lined in rows. Ruth carried in a pan of fried potatoes. Tessa set out spoons and counted so none were left short. People nodded to them and spoke plainly, not carefully. "You held that gate," a ranch wife said to Tessa. "Good work." Tessa's ears turned pink. Deputy Crane tipped his hat when he passed the ranch on patrol. No ledger showed. He paused once and said, "Bridge crew needs canvas for the pulley. You have scraps?" Ruth brought her roll and cut clean strips. "Take more," she said. He did and left with a real thank you. Evenings went quiet in a good way. Jonah taught Tessa to read trail marks and simple letters at the same time. V for valley, R for ridge. They wrote them with a charred stick on a flat stone. Ruth's cough faded to a ghost. She slept more deeply, waking with strength instead of fear. Some mornings they ate in silence because silence was full, not empty. One Sunday, Mrs. Alder stopped after prayers with a small tin. "Honey candy," she said to Tessa, "for brave hands." To Ruth she said, "Winter will come quickly. You have a roof over more than your head now." Ruth smiled and did not hide the shine in her eyes. Jonah set 3 tin mugs in a neat triangle on the smoothed table. "We'll need a bigger loaf pan," he said. It was a small joke. It felt like a vow. Frost wrote thin white lines on the trough at dawn. Breath made little clouds from the horse's nose. Ruth laid a second quilt on the bed and checked the pantry shelves she had set. Jars of beans, sacks rolled and tied, a line of apples in straw. "We are set better than last week," she said. Jonah tested the pump handle. It squeaked, then settled with a solid clunk. "Better as a road," he answered. "We stay on it." The town showed a change you could point at. The bridge crew set new planks and a rope rail. Mr. Dwyer put a broom on a nail by his door as if to say, "We learned something here." The church hall set a board with names under flood help given, not taken. Ruth wrote "canvas strips bridge winch" in her neat hand. Tessa stood on tiptoes to make sure it read clean. The broomcorn sprout outgrew its box and needed a real place. Jonah and Tessa dug a small bed near the stoop where the sun held late. Ruth set the plant and pressed the earth firmly. "Work in water," she told it. "Same as us." Tessa pushed in a flat river stone beside it, the teardrop one from the day they counted hooves. The stone shone faintly in the cold. Deputy Crane rode by at an easy pace. He stopped without ceremony. "School starts after harvest," he said, nodding toward Tessa. 3 mornings a week. I told the teacher the girl at Pikes reads trails and letters both." Tessa lit up. Ruth's smile was quiet but deep. Crane tipped his hat. "You fixed more than the fence," he added, and went on. Near evening, Jonah carried a cedar board to the porch. He carved 3 letters in the soft wood, slow and careful. P-I-K-E. Then he added a small star at the edge like the one on the broom handle. He set the board over the door and stepped back. "A house should say its name out loud," he said. Ruth looked at the board, the key on its nail, the linen curtain moving like breath, the broom standing easy by the door. The world had shifted toward them. She felt it in the floorboards and in the way the kettle sounded like a friendly mouth. Choice rose quietly as mist. Move on as planned or stay and make this life firm. "Tomorrow," Jonah said, voice even. "I have words I aim to say properly." Ruth met his eyes. "Then we'll hear them properly," she replied. Morning showed thin ice on the water bucket and a sky as bright as tin. Jonah shaved, put on his clean shirt with the tight cuffs Ruth had fixed, and swept the stoop once, slow, as if the broom were a pen for the words he meant to say. Mrs. Alder came walking with a small Bible and a smile that understood quiet folks. Mr. Dwyer paused the wagon at the lane. Even Deputy Crane stood by the fence, hands easy on the top rail. Jonah faced Ruth on the porch. Tessa stood between them, solemn as a judge. "I have room," Jonah said, voice steady. "Room at my table, room under my roof, room in my days. If you stay, we'll carry on the work together. If trouble comes, we'll stand shoulder to shoulder. Say yes, and this key is yours by right, not favor." Ruth looked at Tessa, then at the planed table edge through the open door, then at the yard that had learned their names. "Yes," she said. "We will keep our word and keep this place." She set her palm on Jonah's hand. Mrs. Alder looped a thin ribbon around their wrists, simple as tying a rope to a post. "Hands joined," the midwife said. Heart steady, they broke bread, 3 small pieces each, and drank from tin mugs. Jonah drove a stake by the door with one firm blow, slid the leather thong through the wood and hung the house key low enough that Tessa could reach it on tiptoe. "This is home law," he said. Key hangs where any of us can claim it. Snow began without sound, just a flurry like feathers from a winter bird. The first flakes caught in Ruth's hair. Tessa laughed and lifted her face. They went inside and set the soup to simmer, boots drying neatly by the warm. Ruth pinned a clean piece of calico as a curtain tie. Jonah carved a little star in the doorframe to match the one on the broom. Folks say later that in the winter the creek changed its mind. A quiet man claimed a widow and her girl with nothing fancier than work, a ribbon and a key on a nail. They say the place held through hard years because decency kept sweeping. Thank you for riding this trail with us today. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe, like, and share.